GMs for Hire.
Welcome back to GMs for Hire, everybody. My name is Will Polson, alongside with me, Matthew Perry. Today, we are here to bring you another Hall of Fame case video, whether or not a player should be inducted into the Hall of Fame of their sport. Continuing with baseball here, we are going on to a man who is currently active. Whenever he retires, it'll definitely be quite the decision for a lot of the baseball writers. So let's just get right to it. NC Boomstick, the man who does not age, Nelson Cruz, is our topic of discussion here today. Nelly Cruz got a late start to his career and everything such as that, but he seems to be like a fine wine. He just gets better with age. Matt, let's just get your first impressions of Nelson Cruz.
I mean, yeah, late start to his career, which kind of sets him off numbers-wise. He didn't get as much time as some of the other guys to really produce and put up those numbers. But honestly, he has not slowed down in recent years. I mean, just a couple years ago, the last full season before the COVID season, he hit 41 home runs. He had MVP votes that season as well. He had MVP votes last year, even in the COVID season. I think he's a great player, and it's been a kind of tricky one determining whether or not DHs deserve to get in. Obviously, Edgar Martinez got inducted a couple of years ago, so it'll be interesting to kind of deep dive into Nelson Cruz's career and see if he really deserves the Hall of Fame spot. It really, I feel like, comes down to how you feel about designated hitters, but you know, we'll go through it and we'll see what happens.
I'll be interested to see exactly how they classify him, because I'd imagine by the end of his career, as of right now, he's played almost 1,800 games. He's played 700 as of today's date, which is 5/23/21. He has played in 1,783 games. Of those, he has played 785 at DH, which means there's over 900 in the outfield, or at other positions, I should say. So as of right now, this actually honestly shocked me. I guess he couldn't be clarified as a DH. And I wondered, and while we're on that topic, I mean, if he was to retire with more games in the outfield as opposed to DH, off of first impression, do you think that hurts or helps his cause?
If he's to be inducted as an outfielder?
Yeah, if they were going to be considering him an outfielder more as a DH, then do you think that more helps or hinders his cause?
Well, I can't say he's known for his defense. And I know one play in the playoffs, I want to say years back, I think when he was with the Orioles, he made some kind of blunder out and right, and it cost them some runs and maybe even a game. So I don't think it helps at all, because if you're not a DH, you definitely have to factor in defense. And he's never been known for his defense, never been a strong defender. Definitely, if I'm a coach, I'm putting him in the DH spot, whether he's 30 years old or 40. I don't think that really matters. So I don't think outfield would help. I think if he goes in as a DH on that ballot, I think that would be better suited for him.
No, I'm with you 100% whenever it comes to him. And you want to talk about defensive blunders. I mean, the Cardinals don't win the World Series in 2011 if he knows how to play a ball off the wall, or even if he just runs the right route, he could make that catch. And next thing you know, David Freese isn't a hometown hero anymore. And the Rangers could be walking out. That was the final out. That could have been catch, and that could have been end game. Texas Rangers with the World Series. But Nelson Cruz got a little bit of a heavy foot out there in the outfield. Now has spent most of, if not all of his games at DH ever since moving on from Texas. Spent some time with the Mariners, spent some time now with Minnesota Twins. Early in his career, spent minimal games and made his debut with the Milwaukee Brewers. And then, as mentioned by Matt, Baltimore Orioles as well. Those are the only 5 teams. He's been on a couple more teams than Yadier Molina from our first video, but not as many as Zach Greinke. So a little bit of a journeyman, but let's just get into Nelson Cruz. I mean, it seems like Nelson Cruz, as we mentioned, is the guy that just does not age. And it's ridiculous the kind of offensive output that he does, because like we mentioned, this guy got off to a little bit of a late start. Didn't really ever see a full season up until his age 28 season. and didn't really see the power come through to the substantial point that we know today until around 2014 at the age of 33. Nelson Cruz, we saw some early home runs, some 25, some 30s in there. But, when you think of Nelson Cruz, you think of 40 plus. And we've seen a lot of that recently here in his times in both Seattle and in Minnesota. So, Nelson Cruz, obviously, I think the big appeal with him, at least at first, comes from the bat and the power side of things.
Yeah, he's all bat. That's why I think he fits well in the DH spot, because he's not a 5-tool player. He's no Mike Trout. He's no Hank Aaron. You're not going to get in. You're not going to get Nelson Cruz in for his speed or his fielding or anything else. If you're going to get him in, it's going to be for the bat. And I mean, he's a career 278 hitter, so he can hit for contact as well. Like you said, he didn't really start hitting a lot of home runs until his age 32, 33 season. But yeah, the way he broke out in 2009, I mean, it just showed they needed playing time. He played less than 200 games with Milwaukee, less than 100, I actually want to say, and then finally started getting starting nods in Texas in 2009. And he broke out. He was an all-star that year. He hit 33 home runs, and the rest is history. He's been really, really consistent since then. And it's not easy to be consistent for 10 plus years. And here we go. It's been 11, 12 years since that. And he's still doing it. I mean, consistency can definitely help in this case. I do think that it can be harder, since we're pretty much going to have to just go off of hitting ability. So that automatically hinders it. But this man can hit. He's one of the best hitters of our generation of the last decade and a half, and that should be acknowledged.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever we talked about Yachty, and obviously, we had to look at the offensive side for catchers and everything, and the defensive ability, of course, is there among some of the best to ever play the game. We talked about Zach Greinke, who does, great things on both sides of the ball. He can hit very well for a pitcher, and he fields very well. He pitches very well. And now, it kind of gets, it's almost more of can a DH get in? But I think, like, obviously the next one in the class of 2022, we're going to see David Ortiz, but I think everybody knows David Ortiz is going to be a Hall of Famer. As long as they don't, he was part of that 2003 Balco group, David Ortiz was, but it was never, there was a lot of speculation behind it. I think David Ortiz is one of those guys that kind of came away pretty scotch-free from the group. He's no Jason Giambi, no Miguel Tejada, Manny Ramirez. He's none of those guys. I think most people kind of got away from the idea of David Ortiz and steroids, even though he was kind of in that group. And up until 2019, there had not been a career DH person inducted into the Hall of Fame. Back in 2019, Harold Baines and Edgar Martinez, as you earlier mentioned, both got inducted. And that's kind of the hot topic, is that, are the baseball writers going to be, welcoming of the DH in the Hall of Fame? We've talked about that the MLB Hall of Fame is probably one of the most difficult Hall of Fames to get in sports. And right now, Nelson Cruz is one of those cusp guys, because are you going to take Nelson Cruz for just what he is? At the end of the day, he's an amazing hitter, one of the best hitters, and one of the best hitters whenever it comes to, at that time in your age. A 4-time Silver Slugger, a 6-time All-Star, if I'm not mistaken, had quite the postseason batting as well. Batted around 280, 290, and has about 17 home runs in the postseason. So he's got quite the track record. He's not just a bat. He's a little bit more than the DH. And like you said, whenever you look at his average, 278 right now for his career, it's not just pop. So is the bat going to be enough to carry him in, or is the DH stigma going to be enough to hold him out? And that's the question we're here to tackle today. So Matt, you were telling me beforehand that you have a little bit of a comp. What player were you comparing to?
I actually, looking at it now, I know you had it in your notes. I want to compare him to Edgar Martinez, just because I have this stuff up. I know you had a couple, so hopefully that doesn't press you there. But Edgar Martinez and Nelson Cruz are similar but different. Edgar Martinez is mainly listed as a designated hitter and a third baseman secondarily. He spent all of his career in the American League, so this was easy for him. Nelson Cruz spent some of his career in the National League where there's no DH, although he didn't get many at-bats there, and he did get a lot of outfield appearances earlier in his
7 official plate appearances in Milwaukee.
Yeah. So,
not a lot.
Yeah,
but he did spend a lot of his early career in Texas and right.
Yeah, Texas, he spent a lot of time in the outfield. Most of his Baltimore career was in the outfield, and the beginning of his Seattle career was in the outfield, I want to say. And then he kind of fully made that transition to what he is now with the Minnesota Twins, which is a designated hitter. But looking at hitting itself, Edgar Martinez won 2 batting titles. Nelson Cruz has not won any. Edgar Martinez is a career .312 hitter. Nelson Cruz is still active, so this is subject to change. But as of tonight of recording, he is a .278 hitter, which is still very good. Still very good, I would say. Both men have plenty of all-star appearances and silver sluggers. Home runs. Edgar Martinez finished with 309 career home runs. He was not, a lot of the time, a power-hitting designated hitter. He only hit, his career high was 37, and he only hit over 30, looks like one time in his career, and it was that season. While Nelson Cruz has done it several times, led the league in home runs one year as well, and already has more home runs in his career with 427 and counting. The power, they're definitely 2 different types of hitters. We could say that just by looking at the numbers. One's power, one's contact. Both have been a big help to their team. Nelson Cruz's career WAR is 41. Edgar Martinez has actually finished out at 68.4. Of course, he was part of those Seattle Mariners teams that had deep runs in the playoffs with Griffey, Randy Johnson, Alex Rodriguez, the mid to late 90s Seattle Mariners teams where they had a lot of success. Nelson Cruz, of course, has had plenty of postseason appearances, as you mentioned earlier, with Texas, and as I mentioned with Baltimore. He's had the chances, and now the last couple of years in Minnesota. So both of them have had postseason experience, different kind of teams, though. I'll say that. Neither of them have won a World Series, although both have gotten pretty close. They're similar, different styles of hitting, but, cases can be made for both of them, although I'd say in different ways, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, I think Edgar Martinez is a good guy to look at for a reference point. And I think also Harold Baines. And that's why I said, the DH. I think whenever we're comparing a guy who is probably going to be looked at more from a DH standpoint, especially because of recency bias, by the time he retires, I'd imagine he's going to spend 4, 5, 6, 7 years completely as a DH. With the tail end of Seattle, with the time he's going to spend in Minnesota and wherever he may go after this, if he decides to continue his career, which, by the way, he's putting out offensive numbers. I don't see why he wouldn't. Currently, as a day of recording, batting .292, slashing .292, .344, and .535 for an OPS of .878, and an OPS plus of 148. Being that the league average being 100. So that is phenomenal. Still putting out amazing offensive numbers. He's on pace to crack just under 100 RBIs and 40 home runs for the 2021 season if he's to keep up the pace that he's at right now. So he's on pace to just do more Nelson Cruz numbers. I mean, it's nuts. Right now, as of time of recording, he's at 427. If he continues the pace that he's at, he'll be at 457 at the end of the year. Which is going to be fantastic. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that in a little bit. But whenever we were comparing the DHs, I did want to add Harold Baines in there because I did a little bit of a chart, and you're going to be seeing it right here. Harold Baines, between Harold Baines, Edgar Martinez, who both went into the Hall of Fame in the class of 2019, and Nelson Cruz, I compared all of their numbers, starting with their games at DH. Obviously, Harold Baines almost played 3,000 games in his MLB career. Over 1,600 of them were at the DH spot. So quite a few games there. Edgar Martinez, 1,400 games at the DH, while Nelson Cruz only 785. But Nelson Cruz has also played 300 less games than any of these guys. So that has to be taken in with a little grain of salt as well. But then whenever you take a bigger dive into the numbers, obviously we know Nelson Cruz is the home run guy. We know that's what he's known for. He leads all three of these gentlemen in home runs. He also leads them in slugging percentage. Now that's it. Whenever you get into everything else, Edgar Martinez obviously taking the cake for a lot of these categories, taking it in batting average and on base percentage, OPS and OPS plus, as well as WAR. And then Harold Baines comes in and takes it with games and RBIs. But Nelson Cruz is also second, better than Harold Baines in OPS, OPS plus, and WAR. So, obviously WAR being a newer stat, a lot of analysts and a lot of writers and everybody are very fascinated by this WAR topic and everything such as that. So whenever you're looking at Edgar Martinez with a WAR around 70, and you're looking at Nelson Cruz with a WAR in the 40s, Harold Baines not too far behind at a career WAR. He retired at 38.7, but still good enough to get into the Hall of Fame. Whenever you look at his other numbers, 1,600 RBIs is definitely going to do the trick. A career 290 average, definitely a great average as well. 384 home runs. The numbers are there, and obviously a very good offensive player as well. And if you're going to put these two guys in here, I think though their statistics are, a bit in front of Nelson Cruz, a lot of them aren't far stretched. Whenever you look at somebody like Harold Baines, Nelson Cruz's batting average for his career is 278. Baines is 289. Not too far apart. On base percentage, 356 for Baines, 347 for Cruz. Again, not too far apart. And then whenever you look at something like OPS, Nelson Cruz has the edge at 876 when Baines is at 820. So, the discrepancy is right there. And they're pretty similar players. Obviously, Nelson Cruz is still bound to hit tons more home runs. Bearing any, substantial issue or anything such as that, bearing injury or anything going on. But I think whenever you're looking at these numbers just off of first glance, I think it's hard to make a case against Nelson Cruz. And maybe that's just me.
Well, one thing I think should be mentioned here is that Harold Baines got inducted a couple years ago through the Veterans Committee, which means he did not make it within his 10-year ballot that players are subject to, and later had to be inducted in a separate committee, not the traditional way of being inducted, although it still counts. It's a little different than our natural 10-year ballots. So I think that could partially go into the narrative because it wasn't I'll say it wasn't a natural induction. It was a different route, which is still great. And I think Harold Baines is still a fantastic player, but it was not the traditional route that Edgar Martinez got inducted with. And most big names, Derek Jeter will be inducted through that. Big Papi should be inducted through that. It's what most people go through. So it would be interesting if Nelson Cruz didn't make it through 10 years and then got into the Veterans Committee. That's very far down the road and something we can't really predict. So I'd say with these videos, we're really just basing it off within 10 years. Can he get in?
Right.
So hopefully he can get in within the 10 years. But Harold Baines is a great comparison. They do have very similar qualities. But yeah, it'll be interesting for sure where to go with it. It also is key to mention that Nelson Cruz was partially involved in the 2013 steroid scandal, biogenesis kind of thing. Him, Johnny Peralta, Everett Cabrera, Ryan Braun, A-Rod was involved in it. A lot of these guys got suspensions for it, and we were going to do a video kind of covering all of the steroid guys, the A-Rods, the Bonzes, the Giambis, just because a lot of them fall into that same category where they're fantastic players and on the whole deserve to get in, but the steroids and however you look at that kind of keeps them out for many people. I think myself included, we'll have to see what decision I come to when we do that video, but it is key to note that Nelson Cruz was involved in that, so that can definitely change someone's opinion. Will, what are your thoughts after hearing about him being involved in the biogenesis case?
Well, you know, whenever I looked into, obviously the big appeal, like we've said, we've hit the nail on the head, is the bat and the offensive ability of Nelson Cruz. The home runs is what really struck me out. And like I said earlier in the video, if he stays on pace, he'll be at 457 at the end of the year, so right around 460 home runs. I looked up in the MLB history who has 460 home runs and is not in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I did
And
something similar.
what's that?
I did something similar actually. I looked up what is it? Hall of Famers that have 1,800 or more hits and 400 or more home runs.
There you go. So I looked up, you looked up Hall of Famers who have done that. I looked up the opposite. I looked up guys who have accomplished a feat and did not make it. Now, of course, right now there's a little bit of discrepancy because some people are still active. Some people are not on the ballot yet, even though they've already retired. And I'm going to get into all of that. So as of right now, with at least 460 home runs, there are 15 names that are who have accomplished that feat, but have not made the Hall of Fame. Whenever you break it down by categories, 8 of these players have been alleged to steroids. 8 of the 15. Whenever you're looking at it, it's Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Rafael Palmeiro, Manny Ramirez, Gary Sheffield, and Jose Canseco, all of which have been alleged to steroids at a point. And you could include David Ortiz if you want to include David Ortiz in that as well. That would bring the number up to 9. 9 of 15 players. Now, there are some outliers. 3 people have fallen off the ballot, and whether that be just because of other issues in their career, or maybe even one player that we might do another video about, we'll get to later. 3 players have accomplished that feat and did not make the Hall of Fame without any steroids or anything being involved in their career. That would be Adam Dunn, Carlos Delgado, and Fred McGriff. Now, Adam Dunn, a guy who batted around 230, nothing great. Carlos Delgado, it'd be another deeper dive. I don't know too much about his statistics, and same with Fred McGriff. But Fred McGriff was 7 home runs away from 500, so that really makes an interesting point. Now, whenever you go to the active players of those lists, there's still 7 who are considered, 7 who have not made it onto a ballot yet. Now, that being A-Rod, Ortiz, there are 7 who have been on a ballot or are still on a ballot or are still active in the MLB, being Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Albert Pujols, Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz, Miguel Cabrera, and Adrian Beltre. But whenever you hear that number, if you're going to add Ortiz to the list, 9 out of 15 of these guys were alleged to steroids at a point. That is absolutely crazy to think about because, 450 home runs, that's a lot. It's quite an accomplishment. People typically start celebrating around 300 home runs. That's kind of a good threshold where typically you get like an ESPN alert about it and everything such as that. And especially once you hit 400 and then keep going on into your career. But whenever 53% of those players that have reached that feat and are not in the Hall of Fame are linked to steroids, it almost sounds like a death sentence when it comes to Hall of Fame. And yeah, Nelson Cruz is attached to it. And I understand. And I don't know if it's just because I was younger when it happened. And now, it's been, you said that was back in 2013. So it's been 8 years, almost a decade. I'd imagine a decade by the time he retires or by the time he quits hitting 40 home runs in a season. So it makes you wonder because to me, when I look at his numbers, I like it and I'm all for it. But then whenever I hear something like that, it kind of makes me back up a little bit and it makes me a little hesitant.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see why you're hesitant, and I think anybody that's conflicted with the whole steroid thing can and will be hesitant about this because if you let Nelson Cruz in and he was linked to steroids, then what about A-Rod? What about Barry Bonds? It goes way deeper than Nelson Cruz because so many people have been linked, so many quality guys, and I mean, it's a real shame, how they lost integrity for the game and all that, but I mean, it could open eyes if someone like Nelson Cruz gets in with that, because I feel like you have to let A-Rod in, you have to let Bonds in. Those were five-tool guys. Cruz is not a five-tool guy, and if he gets in linked to roids, I mean, I think it's inevitable that Bonds and A-Rod need to get in. But looking at mine where I added hits to it, so 54 players, combined Hall of Famers and non-Hall of Famers, had over 1,800 hits and over 400 home runs. Guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame yet or won't be, Miguel Cabrera, he's pretty much a lock. Adrian Beltre would be someone I'd love to do a video about because I think he could be a close call, although I'd love to see him get in. Mark Teixeira, Alfonso Soriano, guys like that. Carlos Beltran. Guys that are in the Hall of Fame, though, there's 31 of them. The lowest one is Duke Snider, if you wanted to compare to that. He has 407 career home runs and 2,100, just over 2,100 hits. So Nelson Cruz already has him beat. He already has a lot of these guys beat in home runs, and the longer his career goes, the more people he's going to pass. So he's already a member of this list. We just hit the 20,000 mark of MLB players yesterday, I believe. 2 days ago. And out of all that, only 54 guys have had that many hits and that many home runs. So Nelson Cruz is in some elite company here. It really just comes down to how much you value hitting.
And that would be an interesting one, because whenever you hear guys like Soriano, whenever you guys, Teixeira, if I'm not mistaken, Teixeira's coming up on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe this past year was his first, and I don't think he made the cut for the next
I knew
year.
it was this year or the upcoming year.
It was not by a lot. I don't love Mark Teixeira's odds, but he was a switch hitter, so I think that could help his case. He didn't hit the 2,000 hit mark. He barely made that 1,800 threshold that puts him in this company, 1862. But he only played 13 years too. So I don't think as much as I love Mark Teixeira, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But Alfonso Soriano, you could definitely make the case, especially with the MVP year he had. I mean, he was the best player in baseball for a year, which not many people can say, especially around like 2003, 2004, when you have other guys like Bonds and A-Rod still hanging around. It's hard to stake your claim as the best player in baseball. So that's someone I'd love to talk about. But a couple other guys, like I mentioned, Beltre and Cabrera, I think should be Hall of Famers. Cabrera for sure. Beltre, I'd have to do a deeper dive, but yeah, it's an interesting list.
I think Nelson Cruz on average has been around 130, 140 hits over the last couple of seasons, obviously excluding last year being a shortened season. So if he continues on pace, he's looking like he's going to end this year with over 1,900 hits. And I'd imagine if he plays another year, he's going to hit the 2,000 mark. So that might be an interesting case. Obviously dealing with just numbers that we have right now. But if you add 2,000 hits to his name, obviously 2,000 hits, it's a good mark. A 3,000 is a much slimmer company. And I think 3,000 hits is almost, I'm pretty sure we mentioned in another video or maybe off camera that 3,000 hits is like almost a lock. Whenever you get to that point, it's one of those numbers to where, everybody gets really excited for. And again, it's another ESPN push to where, hey, this guy hit his 3,000th hit, which is a phenomenal number in your career. If Nelson Cruz gets up to 450 and 3,000 hits, or not 3,000, but 2,000 hits, does that kind of push for him? I mean, does that kind of make things a little bit more clear?
Well, if he gets 500 home runs, I can almost guarantee it. Although I don't think it's likely. I do think next year would probably be his last year of his career. But I sorted by hits for this, and there's only 5 other guys who have under 2,000 hits, and none of them are Hall of Famers. Edwin Encarnacion, he's currently a free agent. He has 424 home runs and like 15 more hits than Nelly Cruz. I would make a claim for him if he was still playing, but unfortunately, he's not with the team right now. I hope to see him again soon.
Right.
And then we have Mark Teixeira, who we discussed. Don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Jose Canseco, he was linked to steroids. So that's up to you. Andrew Jones, fantastic fielder. He hit 434 home runs, 1933 hits. That is a video we could do. That is something we can talk about because Andrew Jones, I like his odds. If you add the hitting, you add the hitting with the fielding, and I think he could run a bit at some point in his career. I like that a lot. And then with 1936 hits is Juan Gonzalez, who I believe is also linked to steroids at some point in his career. So those are other guys that don't have 2,000 hits yet, and maybe one of them will be a Hall of Famer, that being Andrew Jones, and that I would say is only because the added tools he has. So I do think he needs to rack up some more hits, Nelson Cruz. More home runs obviously would help his case. Him hitting 500 doesn't seem realistic to me. There are plenty of guys above him that don't have 500. Names like Lou Gehrig, names like Willie Stargell, Stan Musial, Vlad Guerrero, big names that did not hit that 500 mark, but it was still enough for them to get in.
I'm kind of cautious because I just don't know how many one or two tool players are in the Hall of Fame. Whenever you think of the Hall of Fame, at least the MLB Hall of Fame, they really do everything they can to make it the best of the best. Like you mentioned, you just said that there was they reached their 20,000th player or 200,000th player.
No, 20,000.
20,000th. Okay.
Stadium yet, yeah.
So 20,000 players in MLB history, and if I'm not mistaken, there's under 300. It's either under 300 or under 400 people in the Hall of Fame. Your percentages are already not high. So whenever you look at it from that standpoint, it's kind of daunting. And whenever you look at a player like Nelson Cruz, it's really going to be how much do you value what he did? Because if you value him as an outfielder, he's toast. I think it's fair to say he's toast. He's a very poor fielder, at least towards the tail end whenever he was out in the outfield. He's not fast. He's not light of foot by any means. He's got great contact and he's got great power, but he's not going to field for you. He's not going to snag a base. And it's just not going to happen. Is he a good leader? Sure he's but is he, it's one of those to where, bouncing around clubhouse to clubhouse, getting short deals. I know he spent 1 year with Baltimore, just spent a short time with Milwaukee, spent short amount of time in Seattle. I mean, he got another contract on top of the first one, but there was a point where he had just kind of gone and just signed 1 year deals and just kind of jumped around. So Nelson Cruz is probably the more controversial player that we've done so far, I think. And right now, like I said, this year or next year expected to be his final year, I'd imagine. And right now I'm looking at him as a 2,000 hit guy, probably in the 470s, 480s for home runs. And it's just, yeah, those are great numbers and all. But if you get up to 480, let's say, then you're going to be, you're looking at like top 30 all time in MLB home runs. You're going to jump Adrian Beltre, and Adrian Beltre is currently at 31st in MLB history. Obviously, Miguel Cabrera is still going to continue to move up the list. He's currently at 30th. So between 31st and 30th is 477 to 491 currently with Miguel Cabrera's numbers. Obviously, he will hit more home runs as we go. I'd imagine he's going to hit 500. So, yeah, around 30th all time in home runs. And then the only name in front of him that hasn't made it into the Hall of Fame would be Fred McGriff, which would be an interesting case. Well, I should say the only person who just kind of fell off without a steroid case or without being active currently. So there's a lot of gray area here. But let me just get your quick reaction away from Nelson Cruz. Do you think power and bat ability should be enough to get somebody into the Hall of Fame?
Well, talking about Nelson Cruz for 30 minutes does not make it easy to get off of Nelson Cruz, but it can be, depending on how much of an impact you have with a team. I'm trying to think of an example, but yeah, like you said, there might not be any Hall of Famers that are just in off of something like that. I mean, even Harmon Killebrew had a fielding percentage of like 981 for his career. So it's a guy that's not known for defense, but I don't know. It really depends on impact. If you get like 5 rings and you're only known for hitting, that'll work for me. Honestly, I think that's good enough for the Hall. But Nelson Cruz hasn't won anything in his career. He's gotten close a couple times, but I don't think close gets you to the Hall. So he can't get in for being a winner. And the hitting stats are very nice. I think the people submitting ballots, they'll have to be very, very easy on Nelson Cruz for him to get in. For any hitter in his situation, no rings, but a solid well above average hitting career, offensive career. There's more to the game of baseball than just hitting. So really, it's hard to say. I'm gonna say it wouldn't be enough, which I guess might give you my decision on this. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say like that someone's deserving if they've only thrived at one part of the game, and that includes winning.
Fair enough. I mean, it is a question that is going to need answers for Nelson Cruz. I mean, is hitting going to be enough to carry you? Because whenever you think about, even when you think about the steroid guys, I mean, even Mark McGwire had a Gold Glove at a point. He's spent time in the field and was decent at it. He wasn't anything. I was going to say he wasn't anything spectacular, but I mean, I guess he was. I mean, at a point when you get a Gold Glove, I mean, you kind of have to. You're considered one of the best fielders in the game. So definitely never been a question for Nelson Cruz. I don't think that's ever been brought into question. His career fielding percentage, if he is to never touch the outfield again, is 983. But probably a smaller sample size. I mean, obviously, how much did Harmon Killebrew play? Did Harmon Killebrew play at first base, or did he DH some? Or
he played first, third, and outfield until the very end of his career, when I think the centers became the Twins, and he got some time at DH. But like 9/10 of his career at least was in the field.
Okay, so that's obviously not as comparable as it may come off as. So it's one of those to where by the time Nelson Cruz retires, though, you got to imagine 50% of his career is going to be spent in the field. Maybe a little bit less. Right now, it's a little bit more. Like I mentioned earlier, 785 games out of 1783 have been spent at DH. So imagine he's going to play 100 more games this season. You'd imagine somewhere around 120 next season. You're looking. Why did I think I was going to do math? Let's just ignore that. You're looking at around around 2,000 games and roughly 1,000. Right around 50%. It's going to be like literally almost right on the mark. So it's one of those. Are you going to consider his time in the field? Is his time in the field going to be enough? I mean, obviously no Gold Glove winner, but we've also said before, Gold Gloves are voted upon. It's not one of those, given out by an organization. We've brought that up in other videos. So are we going to go back on the word? So I guess going back and forth, I guess it's time to make a decision. Nelson Cruz, 10 years on the ballot. You've got 10 years. Obviously, I think it's fair to say he's not a first ballot. Let's agree. Actually, before I ask you, before I make the ultimate decision, we talked about the steroids and everything. If you're going to let Cruz in, you got to let Bonds, you got to let A-Rod, you got to do this. This is Bonds' last year on the ballot. 2022 will be Bonds' last year on the ballot. A-Rod's getting ready to make his first time. Manny Ramirez is still on the ballot. This will be his 6th year on the ballot. David Ortiz, who again linked to steroids a little bit, sure, whatever. 2022 as well. But obviously, McGwire, Sosa, they've all fallen off. Bonds is your last guy. And then you get into A-Rod. And those are going to be your 2 big steroid guys that are on the ballot. If either one or both of them get in, does it make the path easier for Nelson Cruz?
No, I don't think it makes the path easier. Nelson Cruz was involved in steroids, but not to the extent that Bonds and A-Rod were. And those are two completely different animals. I mean, Bonds and A-Rod were five-tool guys. They could really do it all out there in the field and at the plate. While Nelson Cruz just doesn't share the same gift, same ability. So yeah, no, I don't think it makes anything easier or harder whether or not they get in. Um, but I'll save the rest of the steroid talk for the video we do on it.
Fair enough. All right. Final question. Number 23, Nelson Cruz, 10 years on the ballot. Hall of Fame or not? Matt, your answer.
Well, the decision is always the toughest part of the video. But before this video, I figured there would be a way he can get in before within 10 years. I mean, he's a fantastic hitter, and I do really enjoy watching Nelson Cruz play. What he's doing at the age of 40 and 41 is out of this world. I mean, it's hard to imagine someone of that age and with that veteran presence still doing something like that. I mean, we've seen how players like Albert Pujols have fallen off over the years and not brought that same energy. So it's kind of nice seeing someone like Nelson Cruz be able to do that, play at such a high level, at that level. I mean, I'd love to see Albert Pujols. I guess he was just on an American League team and couldn't do that. So I guess that's a credit to Nelson Cruz there. But point being, I do not think Nelson Cruz is a Hall of Famer. Veteran committee, I would look for that. I think that's something that could be considered down the road. Fantastic player, one of the best of a generation. But when you think of the greatest all-around players of all time, he's nowhere near that conversation. Greatest hitters of all time, sure, he could be in the top 50 like he is. And don't take anything away from him as a hitter. Don't disrespect him there. You could definitely acknowledge that. But being an all-around guy at least needs to be partially acknowledged. Being a winner, I think, can come in there kind of partially. Doesn't have to be. I don't think that's fair if you're like Ken Griffey. He didn't win a ring, but he's still a fantastic player. But yeah, point being, no, I don't think Nelson Cruz is a Hall of Famer within a 10-year ballot.
Oh man, it's cold. The first one with a no. I'm gonna have to share it though. I really am. I love Nelson Cruz. I love watching him. He's so fun. And like if there was a 40 and up club, I mean, if there was an Elders Hall of Fame, throw him in there. But I think the late start is really gonna screw him. Whenever he started his career, got his first couple ABs at the age of 24, but he didn't have a season where he played in over 100 games till he was 28. And that's one of those to where that's really going to put a damper on your career. And whenever you look at that, same thing when it comes to home runs. He didn't have a season with more than 9 until his age 28 season. And obviously that's what he's known for. Even whenever he had gotten to that point at the age of 23, he was still putting out, or not at the age of 28, he was still putting out 33 home runs, 22, 29. So when you change that season of 6 home runs into 20, when you change that season of 9 into 20, just going off of 20 as a low point, 7 into 20, and then, if you take that first season he spent with Milwaukee, if he could have got brought up at the beginning of the year, he had 0, put another 20 on there. If it's one of those to where if he had that power stroke from the beginning, that would be a much different animal. And whenever you look at those numbers that I'm saying, I just added 25, 25, 15, which would be 40 plus another 20. I just added 60 home runs to his total if he would have gotten off to Nelson Cruz numbers at the start. Now, obviously, right now he's at 427 home runs. You had 60, is at 487. He continues. He's easily going to clear 500. But that's also imagining you're going to pop off for a lot more hits. You're looking at a 500 home run guy. You're looking at a 2,300, 2,500 hit guy. Then you can make a little bit more of an argument. But I think the late start's really going to push back Nelson Cruz. And even whenever you talk about his fielding and everything, it'd be cool if he was just an everyday fielder. He wasn't anything bad. But if you threw Nelson Cruz in the outfield today, if that ball's not coming right to him, it's it's by him. It's by him. It's dropping in front of him. Whatever the case, he's just not reliable in the outfield. And that's why he DHs. And it's unfortunate. But and as much as I love watching him play, as much as I love watching him just knock the cover off balls, if the Hall of Fame could be just hitting, then he'd be in there. But unfortunately, MLB Hall of Fame, let's be a little realistic with the steroid connection, with the lack of the 5 tools. He's just not the guy that you consider to be one of the best players of all time. Hitters, absolutely. You have to put him up there, especially for what he does at his age. But he's just not one of the best guys of all time. And that's depressing. That's the first no on the Hall of Fame videos, which is fun. I didn't know if we'd get here one day, but it feels weird to finally get here. It almost hurts. I want to raise the banner. I love the little graphic, but unfortunately, not today. GM's Hall of Fame, sure. You want to be part of the GM's Hall of Fame. Come on the pod. We'll have you on here, and if you want to be there, you're automatically stamped in. But other than that, unfortunately, MLB Hall of Fame, at least on our side of things, probably not. I'd probably vote for him for nostalgic sake, but I don't think he's going to find a way in. So
yeah,
that's that. Boomstick, thanks for coming, and thank you for everything you do. But unfortunately, just too late of a start. Too late of a start in the career.
This can definitely be revisited, though. If something happens, if he goes off, if he hits 40 this year, 40 next year, he goes for another season.
Well, he just goes back-to-back MVP now. Like,
if he wins the Triple Crown this year, we'll revisit it. I already want to revisit the Yachty video because what he's doing this year,
he's crazy.
It's something special. It's something special. So, Yachty, I think down the road in maybe a year, if once he retires, I would like to potentially revisit that. These are definitely revisitable. But for now, yeah, Nelly Cruz, I'm sorry. I love you. Sweet chin music, right out of the Hall of Fame talks.
Unfortunate. But we've seen a couple of comments from y'all as well, telling us other players that we should do. And we hear you. We see you guys in the comment section. We're trying to plan out these other videos. Nelson Cruz was just one of the guys we had on the list originally. But continue to do that. Leave in the comment section whether or not you think Nelson Cruz is a Hall of Famer. Also, leave in the comment section any guys you want to see us do a Hall of Fame case for. We'd love to do that. We've seen a couple of players. I know I've seen Robinson Cano in the comment section. I've seen some other people down there as well. So definitely keep those coming at any time. We see the comments. We do our best to respond to the comments. So definitely keep those coming. Make sure like the video, comment on the video, do everything you can. Come join the family. We're almost at 300 right now, just under it. So come join the family. It's been a hell of a time. And we want to keep pumping out these videos for you. But until then, sorry, Nelson Cruz, don't come hit me because I know it'll hurt and my head will go at least 425. But until then, for Matt Perry, for Will Polson, GMs for Hire, y'all take it easy.